it saves students time because then you've got that formative piece of going through the exam afterwards, but they are already processing through as you go through. So they complete their exam, and they are already starting to process the ones they've missed or the ones they got right, and thinking about why they may have missed the question or why they got the question right. So that processing, that formative assessment piece is working really well, and then it gives a chance, we can see those results and which ones they looked at, and we can have a richer conversation, a class-wide discussion about those results. So yes, that aspect does save us time. I think teachers don't examine their assessments for reliability and validity. You know, often they'll take textbook created questions, they'll use those as their assessments, they'll pick through the ones that they want, but then they never do any type of a diagnostic of whether what they're assessing is working and whether it's reliable and whether it's valid.
Is that because it's too hard to do? It's
too hard to do and they don't have the tools. You know, they may run it through a scanner that tells them that such and such percentage got that question wrong, and if it rings a bell in their head because they think it's too high, then they'll look at that question. But a much more scientific way of going through it is having like KR20 values and those mean scores and that kind of statistical analysis of it, which you can look at, you know, whenever because it's web-based, and you can easily identify questions that are probably assessing at the wrong level, or the question itself is not worded properly, or isn't, maybe it's some of the items themselves that are, you know, are too easy or too hard. But it gives you a lot more feedback about what you're assessing and the validity and reliability of the assessment, and that makes, you know, everything better, especially for students. Especially for a district our size, where we've got 4 different high schools and we're all supposed to be teaching the same thing across all 4 high schools, then I know in our building alone, you've got 7 teachers that teach American government, just in our building alone. And you multiply that by the other buildings, and you can easily see that it sure would be nice to have a collaborative piece, especially where assessment's concerned. So when you look at what Naiku's trying to do and create an environment that works just in your classroom, yes, and you've got these results just for your classroom, but also the opportunity to collaborate wider with the teachers not only in your building, who is sometimes difficult to connect with because, you know, you're busy and you're teaching, but also with your colleagues across district, and someday even larger, then you're going to share from that experience, because, you know, what I've been doing and the problems I might be running into could be familiar to a colleague, and then we can start working through those together. And so the collaborative element is important, I think, because it creates, you know, an environment where you can be a professional, but because of the time constraints of our profession, it allows more of that rich discussion, I think. Well, it's a lot better because Prosper wasn't web-based, so I had to be here, and then I had to run it through a scanner, so I'm tied to the scanner, which is on a different floor. So already I've got to set aside prep time to run tests, and the way Prosper is set up, you know, I have to, if someone's using the scanner, I'm waiting more. I can't, let's say I get all that done, and then I didn't have a chance to examine the results and look at them closer, but because it's web-based, maybe I've got a moment at home and I can look at it, or maybe it's a Sunday evening and I choose to, well, I'm going to think about this when I'm going to go in tomorrow, have a quick look at it, I can. It's a lot more flexible, that piece. And I think the students like the immediate feedback, where to Prosper I was not getting immediate feedback. They were waiting for the next day, looking at their bubble sheet, and then matching things up. And so the immediate feedback to them is, I think for them it feels more personal, more individualized, because before, you know, I'm collecting all the papers, and then I'm going to go scan the papers. The next day we're going to hand those things back. We're all going to go through this together. But now this is at, you know, this young man over in the corner who's pretty quick and understands his stuff. He doesn't have to wait for everyone for his result and to start his own processing. It's a lot more individualized that way, rather than lockstep, we're together this way. But it still allows for us to have, you know, richer discussions on the questions that we select the next day, to bring, you know, that formative assessment piece up more and create more learning after the fact. So in that way, it's a lot more individualized than the way I've been testing before.